I want you to challenge absolutely everything you think you know about market charts. Seriously, if you've ever felt like the financial markets are just this chaotic sea of random numbers or totally unpredictable news events, you are definitely not alone. But what if there's a profound mathematical reality hidden just beneath the surface? Today, we're decoding the timeless principles laid out by Constance Brown in The 30-Second Jewel. We're going to explore how universal geometry, history, and human psychology all intertwine to drive global finance. It's an incredible journey, so let's get into it. To find our edge in the markets, we actually have to start with our own minds. The author shares this really powerful insight from the Indian philosopher J. Krishnamurti, and it's a vital mental model for us. Think about it. We are constantly accumulating, right? New indicators, new software, endless opinions on social media. But letting go of those cluttered, accumulated charting habits, essentially emptying our cup, is the absolute first step toward true market wisdom. We literally have to clear the noise out before we can fill it with something that actually works. All right, Section 1. History's repeating market cycles. Let's peel back that first layer of the illusion. Constance Brown makes this brilliant observation here, and it powerfully highlights exactly why studying past financial panics is so critical. We tend to think that just because we have algorithmic trading and high-speed internet, the rules of the game have somehow changed. But they really haven't. The technology changes, sure, and the specific players change, but the core drivers of global market contractions, they remain stubbornly consistent across centuries. So why does history keep repeating? Well, understanding historical global cash flows can help us spot the early warning signs of modern crashes. Here are 3 reasons. First, human behavior, specifically greed and fear, is a universal constant. Second, financial pipelines have been internationally connected for hundreds of years. A crisis in one region is almost always going to cross global borders. And third, always watch central bank mechanics, specifically the discount rate, which is the interest rate banks charge each other. Watching that often reveals the true hidden stress in the system way before the public ever panics. To put that into perspective, just look at this timeline of 19th century panics. A really distinct pattern emerges here. In 1815, it was provincial bank runs. Jump to 1836, and we saw massive, fictitious land sales fueled with unbacked loans. 1857, unchecked speculation in railroads. And 1890 brought a massive sovereign debt crisis. In literally every single instance, you can see how excessive debt combined with unchecked human speculation repeatedly triggers these cascading global collapses. In fact, let's compare the credit crisis of 1836 directly with the modern 2008 banking crisis. In 1836, they were dealing with unbacked loans and sweeping bank failures. In 2008, what did we have? Tremendous national debt, quantitative easing, and massive reserve issues. It's wild, but the fundamental mechanics of a financial crisis remain exactly the same today as they were nearly 200 years ago. If you can learn to read the past, you can absolutely map the future. Okay, moving on to Section 2, fixing common charting mistakes. Let's get into the actual mechanics of the market now and look at the specific errors retail traders make with popular charting tools. This is a crucial warning. When using technical tools like Fibonacci retracements, beginners have this terrible habit of blindly snapping their cursor to the absolute highest and lowest points on their screen. They just rely on the default software settings without truly understanding the underlying price action. So they're staring at the extremes, but they completely ignore the internal story the market is actually trying to tell them. So how do we fix this? We need a new blueprint. These 3 actionable steps will immediately help you clean up your charts, manage your risk, and hopefully avoid those catastrophic drawdowns. First, stop cluttering your screen. Clear off those vendor defaults that are just adding visual noise. Second, focus heavily on internal price structures. We're talking about gaps and overlapping zones, not just the swing extremes. And third, you have to realize that analyzing price alone is going to fail if you don't combine it with time factors. Take a look at the tight confluence zones we're showing here. Notice how different Fibonacci ratios actually overlap with each other. That overlap creates a true structural level of support or resistance. And further down, look at that small gap. There is an unbreakable rule in market structure. You never ignore a gap. Markets will eventually retrace to fill them, even if it literally takes years to happen. Let's walk through these exact mechanical steps so you can actually put them into practice today. By clearing unneeded default software ratios, you immediately remove the visual clutter that's confusing your brain. Then, by identifying tight confluence zones, you minimize your risk spread. That means you know exactly where your stop loss should go without risking a massive chunk of capital. Basically, it's time to stop blindly picking swing extremes based on hope and start trading based on structural reality. This structural reality builds perfectly into advanced frameworks like the Elliott wave principle, which is the idea that markets move in predictable, repetitive wave patterns. If you compare standard impulse waves with complex corrective triangles, you'll see the problem. A lot of traders try to count these waves using price alone, and they just get destroyed because complex corrections often look exactly like structural breakouts. Price alone simply isn't enough to confirm these intricate wave structures. To fix that specific problem, you absolutely have to use detrended oscillators. These are analytical tools that strip away the overall direction of the trend to show you the market's hidden momentum, and you apply them across multiple time frames. It is the vital missing piece for accurate market mapping. When the price structure is ambiguous and you aren't sure what's happening, timing cycles and detrended oscillators will point you straight to the actual pivot. All right, Section 3, Logic Fallacies in Trading. Now, here's the thing. Even with the perfect chart, you can still fail. Let's strip away the mechanical tools entirely for a minute and look at the trader's mind. This is perhaps the most relatable insight in this entire explainer. We really have to remember that the biggest risk in trading isn't market volatility. It isn't news events or sudden crashes. The absolute biggest risk is our own flawed mental models. The psychological blind spots and logic fallacies we carry around in our everyday lives, they transfer directly onto our trading screens. So here are 3 specific cognitive traps that professional traders actively screen for to protect their capital and maintain emotional discipline. First, avoid the false dilemma. That's believing there are only 2 choices when a third option clearly exists. Second, beware of red herrings, getting distracted by flashy, irrelevant news that pulls you off the core trend. And third, reject oversimplifications. You can't try to boil a complex, multidimensional market down to a single moving average. It just doesn't work. Let's map out how devastating these fallacies can actually be in practice. Think about the false dilemma for a second. Is the market going to break up or is it going to break down today? When you think like that, you entirely miss the third, totally valid choice, which is simply not trading at all. Relying on oversimplified logic for a 3-dimensional chess game like the stock market is a guaranteed path to failure. You have to think critically. Finally, let's dive into Section 4, the law of vibration. Now we're moving beyond standard charting into an ancient concept famously studied by the legendary trader W.D. Gann. It draws on mathematical wisdom stretching way back to places like ancient Egypt and Dwarka, India, and honestly, this is the true jewel of the source material. It's the profound revelation that markets don't just move in random mechanical cycles like a ticking clock. Instead, they actually vibrate according to universal geometry and acoustics. Let's lay out these principles of market harmonics. This completely shifts the paradigm from standard charting to the physics of sound. First, you have to visualize the market vibrating exactly like a musical string. Second, just as striking a string creates a fundamental tone and subsequent overtones, market crashes and peaks create fundamental frequencies that dictate future price action. And third, in this paradigm, price and time are not separate things at all. They share exact geometric proportions. Let's make that a bit more concrete. Think of the market literally like a guitar string. When a major historical crash happens, it establishes fixed endpoints, which creates a fundamental frequency. Even long after that initial shock is over, that event sends continuous harmonic vibrations, overtones, into the future. The ripples and vibrations projected into future price swings are deeply mathematically related to that original fundamental wavelength. And this isn't just some abstract theory. What you're seeing here is the Pythagorean scale, the ancient ratios used to tune musical instruments, applied directly to the S&P 500. Notice how applying these ancient harmonic fractions like the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth perfectly maps out the critical major swings of the modern stock market. The math that makes music beautiful is the exact same math governing global capital flows. It's pretty mind-blowing. So the law of vibration basically states that like causes produce like effects. The ultimate power behind price movements relies entirely on harmonic resonance, not random retail noise. The market isn't just a casino. It's a naturally occurring phenomenon governed by the immutable principles of sound, geometric proportion, and universal balance. We've covered some massive ground today, from 19th century panics to identifying our own psychological blind spots, all the way to the musical geometry of price action. So tomorrow, when you sit down and face your screens, I want you to ask yourself, are you trading the chaotic, random noise of the crowd, or are you finally ready to empty your cup, abandon the illusion, and listen to the market's true harmonic frequency? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and keep learning.